While I still have them, I'm going to take a moment, because nobody's done this that I can tell, is compare the Easy Command plus the Easy Command Plus. Real quick, I'll go over the pros and cons of each. So let's hook them up and I'll show you the difference. Alright, so here's the original Easy Command right here. Now before you plug anything in, and this is how people get into trouble, is you need to plug your track in first. And I've got a 5 amp booster, so we'll turn that on. And then you plug in your power cord. And for whatever reason, and this hasn't happened to me because I know I've screwed up and done it, but if you put the power on and then put your track power on, I've heard people say it fries these or it ruins the capacitors or something. But I haven't had that experience, so just be forewarned if that has been reported. So this right here, you notice if you push down on it, nothing happens. That's the stop button, emergency stop. So let's say your trains are going and you've got a collision. These have what they call momentum, so it takes a second after you've adjusted the throttle for the train to either take off or stop. So if you've got an emergency, you can hit the stop button right here. And what that does is that it kills everything. With number 3, you'll see this train over here starting to take off. And with the function button again, you'll see this blinks. Now I've got access to the sounds. Alright, see how the train's going. And I've got the sound off on it, but if you hit the function button, this will flash right here. And now you've got access to the sounds. So the first one we have bell, long whistle, short whistle. 10 on DCC, even though it says for analog, that turns your lights on. F8 is mute, so you can see that it was muted. Now I've unmuted it, so I'll mute that again. So the regular Easy Command, it's not going to be really that much different as far as programming goes. If you want to change your programming, you just go to the one that you're on and you hit both of these together. This will flash, then you can choose a new location. But we're not going to go ahead and do that. I'm just going to let you know that that hasn't changed. It's the same with both. What has changed is the position of the LEDs, and there's nothing here that gives way. So I've canceled the noise from this steam locomotive and this diesel. So now all we hear now is this one. Alright, so you only have LEDs here on the numbers, and so you've got 1 through 9 and then 10. When you use 10, so you can use one analog locomotive using this controller, and Bachmann says you can use a signal cable between this one and an analog controller, and I tried that. It doesn't work very well, so I don't recommend that personally. But you can use one analog DC locomotive, but you want to be careful that as soon as you're done using it, you take it off the tracks, because there's track power live all the time, and if you've got a DC analog locomotive just sitting there idling, you can potentially burn the motor out. So if you're going to use the DC locomotive, keep an eye on it. If it starts to feel hot, take it off. So functionality of the first Easy Command, it's pretty limited. You've got 9 locomotives maximum. I don't think this has enough amperage putting out to run 9 locomotives. I think you'd probably run into some trouble. They say this is plenty of amperage for at least 2 to 3 locomotives on a normal 4x8 layout, provided you don't have a lot of track. You know, if some people have like 5 or 6 ovals and crossovers and everything else, so it's pretty much limited. I don't know what the specific number of feet of track that this is good for, but for sure if you get more than a couple ovals, you may want to consider a 5 amp booster. You only have one level of programming, so you have 10 spots and that's it. On the back, this right here would go to a walk around companion. This goes to your track. Here's your power, and if you had a DC controller, there's another signal cable that you can use to connect these together. And like I said, I've tried it, and I don't really think it's that great. So with this controller, let's say you're using locomotive 3, which I've selected over there. If I want to use the sound function of the locomotives, you would push the function one time. Your locomotive that you've got selected will flash, and then you can choose whatever sound that you want to that's associated with that engine. But keep in mind, if you've got an expensive, fairly complicated locomotive with more than, say, 9 sounds, you're going to find that you can't use them. So pretty limited as to the amount of features this has, but it's a great basic DCC controller that is good for most of us who aren't running a super complex layout. And it's an introductory thing. We're just getting back into it after 40 years of not playing trains. So it's a pretty good buy, and just be careful and do like I said, where you plug the track in first and then the power. Alright, so now we'll switch over to the Easy Command Plus. Same thing. You want to do your track power first, and then your power to your unit. Alright, so I've silenced all the locomotives, and it's the same way like you would go with no light, select the locomotive of your choice, hit function once, hit the F8, and that will put your noises back on. Alright, so with Easy Command Plus, you've got 128 speed steps, which means the amount of control is almost infinite as far as speed goes. And you can see there's an LED indicator down here, and this thing will turn forever. There's no stop on it. But this little speed indicator here, you can see that it's increasing. And it takes quite a few turns to make those LEDs move. But there's 3 different steps of programming, of function programming. So F1 is your green light. That's your first level of programming for sound. F2 is the second level, 3 is the third level. And so with this controller, you've got basically 27 different locations for sound, but not locomotives. So you can still only have 9 DCC locomotives programmed on the track, and you can use 1 DC locomotive. Also 0 is your headlights again. It'd be the same as 10. And that turns your LED headlight on or off. Now personally, I think it's really not super intuitive how to use this controller. Like I said, you've got 3 different levels of programming, and as far as like sounds, if you've got a deluxe locomotive with more than say 7 or 8 sounds, it's great because you can go to different levels of it. You can also use the function and 9 button on this to program DCC turnouts. So I don't use DCC turnouts. I pretty much don't mind throwing the switches, but if you've got a complex layout and you want to have all your switches or turnouts controlled by DCC, this will do that. So if I've got my train running, alright, let's say I have my train running and I want to stop that train, you can just push the button down 1 time, and then when you take the button back off, you see that the LED has gone down, so now you start over again. Why is this different than the stop button? Well, the stop button stops everything. This right here just stops the train that you're using. And by doing so, you're only stopping the locomotive on that address. You're not turning them all into a complete stop, just that one. So Bachmann says these are what's going to be provided in all the DCC train sets going forward. And you'll notice there's no place on there to put an analog controller anymore. You can put your walk-around companion, which is behind the decal. You've got a signal cable there that you can send to the track, or you've got a power cable port that goes to the track right there, and then your main power. But always make sure you connect the track first, and then the main power to your controller. Not doing so could result in a damaged controller. So in closing thoughts, I think the Easy Command Plus is okay. I mean, it's a good basic controller that comes with an introductory layout or train set. And I've got the 5 amp booster, I've got lots of track and lots of trains, and I don't have any issues. I think if you were going to run more than 2 or 3 trains, you'd still want the 5 amp booster, and if you had a 4x8 with a lot of track, you might want the booster. This thing only puts out 1 amp, and even though Bachmann says it's enough for a small to medium layout, I think you might be really pushing on the cusp of what it's capable of. But in a nutshell, the noticeable improvements, or the speed indicator, the infinite turning of the knob. Again, the knob doesn't have any preset stop, so it can turn continuously either way. So as far as like managing the speed of your locomotive, that's pretty good. The LEDs, instead of having a little dot by the button itself lights, so I don't really think that's an advantage at all. The three different levels of functioning programming, if you've got, like I said, a complex locomotive with a lot of sounds, that's probably a good idea. Or if you've got DCC switches. But for most people, you don't need three levels of programming. You're just going to have 4 or 5 sounds on a basic sound locomotive. You're not going to have DCC program switches. So there's a lot of fluff in there that's really not needed. So, I mean, to be totally honest, if I was starting out from scratch and I didn't have a train set, I didn't go buy a DCC train set. Let's say I wanted to build it with components. I probably would not buy this one. I would probably get something that I could walk around with wirelessly. But having said that, this is what came with an introductory train set, so it's what I have. And I don't hate it. It's just a little bit confusing, a little bit clunky. And I think they probably could have done a little bit better explaining how to use it in the instructions. So I'm sorry if I'm a little bit confusing. I'm still trying to figure it out myself. But overall, a comparison between the Easy Command Plus, the only real difference is the speed indicator, the stop button on the speed knob itself that allows you to stop one train instead of all of them. I think those are good advantages. And getting rid of the analog controller input port, that's a no-brainer. It didn't work well anyway. So I hope this has been helpful, and like I said, I'm getting back into trains after about a 30-year hiatus with a HO scale train, so a lot of stuff was new to me, and I'm just kind of going over it with you as I'm discovering it myself. So I by no means am I sitting here telling you that I'm the expert. If you know more about this than me, I really want to hear what you have to say. So please, by all means, let me know if I'm being dumb or if I'm missing something. I really want to know. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for watching.